Hello there everyone, welcome to Creative Coloring with Erum. I'm Erum Tasneem and today I am sharing 2 cards featuring the new Mini Delight stamp Petite Posy. So this is the stamp and die set. It is such a tiny stamp, but I used it in a way to make the most out of it. First major thing. To give this stamp a more regal look, I will heat emboss this in antique gold embossing powder. I will stamp several of these on A2 watercolor cardstock. This cardstock is from the loose watercolor cardstock pack. I will be using cotton candy and mango smoothie liquid watercolors and the ruby light brush marker. I'll add a bit of pigment onto the watercolor palette from the bottles and the brush. I'll spray the panel generously with water. I'll cover the entire panel. Then I'll start dropping in the pigment. This is wet on wet watercoloring and very easy to do. I'll drop a bit of each pigment and sometimes I'll add more of one than the other to get variation. You can keep on adding to this till you are happy with the look. Be a little careful as to not get the pink into the leaves. If you like super green leaves, that is. I really didn't have a problem with my colors mixing and turning brown. It would just give my images a little more variation and the brown in the leaves would go with my card. The pigment is same in both the markers and the little bottle, that is the refill, and also can be used as liquid watercolors. You can use either one of them. I didn't have the liquid watercolor for a ruby light, that's why I'm using the brush marker. For the greens, I'm using lime and moss pigment from the brush markers. And when I want to add a more concentrated pigment in some areas for the leaves, I'll use the brush directly. So I fussy cut all the images. You can even die cut these. I actually did die cut them but didn't like the white border, so I just fussy cut them. I'm using the Woodgrain Powder Cardstock. It has a beautiful and subtle wood grain texture. I have made quite a few cards with this in the past and now I'm on my last sheet, which means only 4 more cards. I decided that the panel needs a bit of inking to bring out the texture a bit more and also to add a more brown touch to it. I used Rocky Shore dye ink and the large blending tool to do this. Here I'm showing you the original cardstock and the one I inked to show you the difference. You can notice the difference right away. It's subtle, but it added so much warmth to my card. Now I will arrange the images onto the inked panel and see the difference. On the original panel, the pink was more prominent and here the orangey tone is more evident. I have already put foam tape behind the flowers and I'll adhere them onto the panel. And I will cut off the excess and adhere them onto the edges wherever they would fit or seem appropriate. Then I will adhere satin gold sequins, a lot of them. For the sentiment, I'll adhere a gold cardstock strip onto vellum. I'll adhere this onto the card front. Then I'll adhere the hello die onto it. I'll show you how I laid the hello die. I took out the hello die cut in gold and black. Then I used the black as an offset to the gold and adhered them together. Then I used the offset die and die cut a hello in Woodgrain Powder Cardstock. I adhered all the layers together. The second sentiment is heat embossed in antique gold on black. I just cut it to size and glued it. For the next card, I started by first die cutting the sentiment hugs twice in gold and black and adhered both together using the black one as an offset. I have this rectangular piece of cardstock on my panel. This is for the sentiment and I'm going to use it as a guide to add watercolor. I have moss, mango smoothie, rubellite and cotton candy on my palette here. These are watercolor brush marker pigments, so they can come from the liquid watercolor or the brush. It won't matter, as I said, they are both the same. I'll add green and I'll keep this quite diluted, but after adding the green I will heat set this so the green is permanent, sort of. Then I'll add the pink, that is rubellite, and then mango smoothie. Lastly, I'll add cotton candy. Even if the pink mixes with the green, it's going to give me a greenish brown shade. And as I mentioned, I'm not worried too much about it. It's going to work for this card even if it does mix. Once the panel is dry, I'll add brown inking to this too. I didn't do it before the watercoloring because this is a dye ink and it would have reacted with the water and the watercolor. I'm also going to ink my sentiment piece, the regular piece that is, where the die cut will go. Off camera, I'll add a layer or a mat to this piece of the same cardstock in its original condition without the inking. I'll apply foam tape behind the rectangular piece and then adhere it to the panel. Next, I'll adhere the die cut and then I'll add the florals. I'll also cut up leaves and change the position a bit so all of them don't look the same even though it's the same image. After this, I'll add more splatters of moss watercolor, and while doing this I thought I needed more green on the upper half of the panel. So that's what I did. It's really subtle. Then I added gold and black paint splatters. The gold is from the metallic watercolor set. And to finish, I added a gold glitter die cut of one of the butterflies from the Mix and Match Mariposa Die Set, plus a few satin gold sequins. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching and for the lovely comments on my Instagram post. Bye!